Hey, how's it going? This is a Red Mage guide up to level 50. This is a Shadowbringers 5.0. So we're going to start off by basically pointing out the most recommended, the most priority heavy uses or functions of the single target, and then we're going to do the AoE rotation after that. So before I even do anything, I want to actually jump into traits. Dualcast at level 1 grants the effect of Dualcast upon casting any spell with a cast time. Under the effect of Dualcast, your next spell with a cast time as well will be casted immediately with no cast whatsoever. We're going to cast Veraero 2. Now we have our dual cast. Basically, during dual cast, it's going to last 15 seconds. We can cast things like Veraero, we can cast things like Verthunder, things that have a long cast. By long cast, I mean now that our dual cast is gone, you can notice here that our Verthunder has a long cast of 4.8 seconds. And so does the Veraero. Now our Jolt 2, which is the upgraded version, only has a cast time of 1.92, so you kind of just have to weigh that out. Cast your short cast abilities and then cast your long cast abilities. Do not cast your long into long, because that's a huge waste of DPS. And the second main mechanic of Red Mage is basically a kind of like a balance between a light and a black magic cast. As you can see down here, I have a 7, and right below it I have a 0. So on top of it is light cast, and below it is a dark cast. So you're going to actually be balancing out between light and dark. So we're going to do the AoE rotation first, because it's a lot easier to explain AoE. It's fewer buttons to press. The first thing that we need to do is, since we are above and beyond in light magic or light mana here, we're at 28. We're going to focus on dark instead until we pass that light of 28. So we're going to focus on Verthunder first. Verthunder is fast, so we're going to cast Verthunder first, and then we have that dual cast. Now right here is where you're going to cast your scatter. And so we're at 28 again. We're going to cast our Verthunder, but we don't want to go above, so we're going to cast our scatter again. You're always trying to keep the mana as balanced as possible. So the first thing about the single target rotation is you're going to cast your Jolt. Instead of casting your Veraero or Verthunder into your scatter, you're going to cast your Jolt into either Veraero or Verthunder, which will have a longer cast time. So let's go ahead and cast something like Veraero instead of Jolt, since it has a pretty short cast time. We're going to imagine that was Jolt, and then we're going to cast into it Verthunder. Now we're going to do the same for our Veraero. Now, as you notice down here, Verthunder is lit up, but the Verstone is not. These guys have a 50% chance of popping up, just like the Dancer has a kind of like a RNG chance of it being lit up. Once they're lit up, they kind of take over for your Jolt. So instead of actually using your Jolt, you're going to use whatever these are lit up. Now, keep in mind, you need to make sure that you keep a balance, but anytime these guys are lit up, you're going to use them instead of your Jolts, because obviously these guys do a lot more potency than your Jolt does. And we're just going to continue doing that until we get to 80 on both. Now once you get to 80 on both, this is where your single target melee comes into chance. The first ability is going to be Corpse to Corpse. It rushes target and delivers an attack with a potency of 130. This is basically your gap closer. The second and the third and even the fourth are going to be 3 single target melee weapon skills that tether along with each other. You generally want to use these once you hit 80 on both light and dark. So the first one is going to be your Enchanted Repose. Deals magic damage with a potency of 210, and it requires 30 black and white mana. The second one's going to be Enchanted Zorshal, if that is how you pronounce that. It's going to do 290 and requires 25 black and white. And the last one's going to be Enchanted Redoublement, dealing 470 potency with 25 both black and white. And finally, once you've finished up with those, we're going to use our Displacement, dealing 130 potency. And this guy will actually put us back to our ranged position so we can renew our casting again. Now the displacement has 30-second off global cooldown. It is instant cast, and your corpse has a 40-second off global cooldown, instant cast as well. And now let's start talking about the off global cooldowns. Pretty much anytime you have that dual cast and you use it on the next spell, as soon as that second spell ends and your dual cast is gone, that gives you a chance to cast up to 2 off global cooldowns. And the next one is going to be swift cast, so you can do something like let's dual cast out something like a Verthunder, and then let's go in and swift cast a Veraero. Anytime you have your swift cast out the abilities or the spells with a long cast bar. So up to level 50, the first ability, the first off global cooldown ability is going to be Fletch. Delivers an attack with a potency of 420. This is an ability with an instant cast with 25-second off global cooldown. To a downtime, we're going to cast our Fletch. So an acceleration. So typically these two, Verstone or Verfire, typically proc off 50% chance, but what this guy does is as soon as you use it, this is instant cast with 30-second off global cooldown. After you've used your Verthunder or Veraero, there's a 100% chance that your Verstone and Verfire will be ready. Now in the downtime, we're going to cast that acceleration. Then we're going to use our Verthunder into our Verthunder 2 into our Verthunder, and now it's going to give us that Verfire. After the Veraero, it would give you the Verstone instead.
Okay, so at level 50, before we begin with the dungeon example, using Jolt or Veraero Verthunder, Jolt is basically when you have one target, a single target. If you have 2 or more targets, go ahead and use your Veraero 2 or Verthunder 2. Now once you've done that and you're prepped with your dual cast, you're going to be casting either Veraero or Verthunder if it's 2 or less targets, because of potency wise. But if there's 3 or more targets, you're going to be using your scatter instead. Don't worry too much about this. I'll put it in the description if you get lost. And remember, your acceleration doesn't work with your Veraero 2 Verthunder, Verthunder 2 into scatter. It's mostly tailored around 2 or less targets. So if anything, just if you're doing your AoE rotation, just completely ignore this if there's 3 or more targets. And finally, guys, the hitbox on scatter is not as big as you think it is. It's roughly if I use it on the 80 striking dummy, it won't hit the 70. That's what I'm saying. It's not as big as you think it is, but just if there's two targets and they're split apart, just like this 70 and 80 striking dummy here, just go ahead and use your Veraero Verthunder as a finisher instead of your scatter. Alright, so let's get this started. So remember, your acceleration is pretty much useless in the AoE unless you're starting to run out of mobs. Other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward. We're going to see how many mobs he grabs, and then we're going to do our rotation from there. So we're going to do our Jolt here. Nope, we're going to swap back to AoE. It all depends on how many mobs you have together. So right here we can do our swift cast into our acceleration, but now there's more targets. So we're going to do our AoE instead. Oh, he's grabbing more stuff. Good, good. We got the splatter. So we're pure AoE now. Let's go ahead and do the scatter. Remember, do your off global cooldowns. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Do your off global cooldowns after your dual cast expires. So we're going to do our swift cast into another impact here. Not impact, the scatter. So we're down to 3 targets, now we're down to 1 target. And do our Verthunder there. If things die while you're doing the finisher, your melee finisher, just go ahead and swap targets. So acceleration, just make sure what you have unlocked here in terms of your Ver Stone or Ver Fire before you pop that acceleration. Remember, they don't stack. We have another one here. Go finisher, melee, back to ranged. We got another Ver Fire proc. Let's go ahead and pop that acceleration. Ver Fire. No need for scatter there. That was my mistake. 2 targets, you're still going to do your single target finisher. Doesn't matter, just focus the boss. Let's go ahead and do the proper rotation here. So Veraero 2 into Verthunder. Got a first stone proc. Oh, boss is dead. Alright, good stuff. We'll see you guys next time for level 60.